distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's lecture. Tonight's lecture is being organised by the Hellenic Observatory here at the school in the European Institute and is organised jointly with APCO Worldwide, that is sponsoring a series of lectures on the future of Europe, and we're delighted to have the support for this evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. Dr. Erato Kozakou-Marcoullis is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Cyprus. Now, it's a little while since we've had an event at the school on Cyprus, and we're pleased to be rectifying that this evening. The Hellenic Observatory is making more of a focus on Cyprus these days, in the sense that we have just established a new fellowship on contemporary Cyprus, and 2 new appointees will begin this fellowship in September. And this is the Andreas Hagianis Fellowship here in the European Institute. In parallel to that fellowship on Cyprus, I'm also pleased to mention that we will have a conference on the Cypriot economy here at the school on the 10th of February. And we're delighted that at that conference we will be welcoming our colleague and Nobel laureate, Chris Pessoidis, to speak at the conference. So this evening's lecture with the Foreign Minister allows us to signal our developing focus on Cyprus. Now, Dr. Kozakou-Marcoullis has been Foreign Minister of Cyprus since last August, but she has previously served as Foreign Minister in 2007 and 2008. She has had a very distinguished career, serving as Ambassador in the United States, holding a position in the permanent mission to the United Nations, for example, and she has participated in truly numerous assemblies, conferences, congresses of the European Union, the United Nations, OSCE, the Commonwealth, etc., etc. Even more importantly than the distinguished career in diplomacy that she has accumulated, I'm pleased to note that the Minister was trained in political science, law, and sociology. You are therefore amongst friends, academic friends, here at the London School of Economics. It means, with a combination of her training and the longevity and variety of posts that she has held, she is extraordinarily well placed to reflect on the position of Cyprus today and its future prospects. As we all appreciate, Cypriots have had reason to often lament their geostrategic position within the region. The influence of successive great powers, identifying no particular great power in this context, has often been immense and on occasions tragic. Today, however, Cyprus is a full member of the European Union, is about to hold the Council presidency of the European Union for the first time. And of course, we read in the newspapers with much interest the discovery of fossil fuels in the shores around Cyprus. All of this suggests some exciting new economic opportunities for Cyprus. It seems, therefore, that there could not be a more opportune time for us to reflect on the position of Cyprus today and its future prospects. As is normal in these occasions, after the Minister has given her lecture, we will open it up to questions and answers from the audience. There will be plenty of time for you to ask your questions. And then immediately after the lecture, right outside this particular theatre, there will be an open reception for everyone to join us for informal discussions. But before that, can you please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the Foreign Minister of Cyprus, Dr. Kozakou-Marcoullis.
Your Eminence, distinguished guests, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to be here this evening, and I would like to thank wholeheartedly the London School of Economics and Political Sciences, which in its nearly 120 years of existence has advocated and worked for the betterment of society, reaching out with a global agenda and having achieved an outstanding reputation that has produced so far 16 Nobel laureates. I would like to thank, in particular, Professor Kevin Featherstone of the Hellenic Observatory in the European Institute of the LSE for this invitation and for the organization of today's event. For me, this is an opportunity to discuss with you a topic which for more than a year now has increasingly preoccupied the media in our part of the world, the Eastern Mediterranean, and has attracted the attention of many political analysts and academics. Clearly, developments in the last few months off the southern shores of Cyprus have also impacted elsewhere, drawing the attention of a much broader audience, which has now come to include foreign governments, international conglomerates, think tanks and academics, and of course the international media. This increased attention is understandable and natural, given the fact that the strategically sensitive area of the Eastern Mediterranean has added to its centuries-long geopolitical strategic importance an ingredient which has been the most central element, perhaps even the most contentious element of the modern era, the issue of energy resources. From the outset, it should be acknowledged that there is great recognition in Cyprus by the government, by the parliament, and by the society at large, that the subject of energy is both promising, but at the same time perilous. We know that it can serve to rebuild, can serve to reunite, heal and secure our country. We also know that it is a subject which holds great risks and must be managed carefully and with wisdom. As such, it is important to state that the Republic of Cyprus is keen on moving forward in this area, but will do so vigilantly and responsibly, adhering to fundamental principles which will serve to guide our decisions. These principles are, in no particular order of importance, because we consider them of equal importance: that our actions will be in line with international law, that we will proceed through agreement and collaboration with those of our neighbors willing to engage in a dialogue with us on the basis of the principles of international law, that we will act within the parameters set by the European Union acquis, and, of course, within our obligations to the Union as a whole and towards our citizens, all our citizens. The story of the recent developments in and around Cyprus is interlinked with its history and, most importantly, with its geostrategic importance throughout ancient and modern times. Since the early Neolithic times, some 12,000 years ago, Cyprus has been probably one of the most contested islands in the entire Mediterranean Sea, not only because of its priceless strategic location, but also because it was one of the earliest locations where copper, a crucial ingredient in bronze weaponry, was produced and traded in very large quantities. As a result, Cyprus became a wanted target for many invading powers throughout its tumultuous history. So, I believe it is important to mention, in general, some of the aspects of this historical burden, if I may, of the island's strategic position, because they remain pertinent to this day. The first thing one will notice when looking at a map of Cyprus and its environs is how small our country is. Yet, it is the third largest island in the Mediterranean after Sicily and Sardinia. The second is how close we are to the European mainland, to Africa and to Asia. In fact, Cyprus lies 280 kilometers to the east of the small Greek Dodecanesian island of Castellorizo and 800 kilometers from mainland Greece, 75 kilometers to the south of Turkey, 105 and 108 kilometers to the west of Syria and Lebanon, respectively, 200 kilometers to the northwest of Israel, and 380 kilometers to the north of Egypt. Anyone who remembers the history of these countries and the wider region of the Mediterranean will be able to connect the dots between empires, ancient and modern, trade routes, north, south and east-west, and conclude that Cyprus was historically an indispensable asset from a strategic point of view for great powers, real or aspiring. Assyrians, Egyptians, and Persians conquered and ruled the island until it was liberated in 333 BC by Alexander the Great. Then came the Romans, Richard the Lionheart during the Third Crusade, the Knights of Templar, the French Lusignan, the Venetians, the Ottomans. With the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, Cyprus's strategic value became even greater. With this in mind, in 1878, Great Britain occupied and took over the administration of the island from the Ottomans. In 1914, when Turkey joined Germany's side in the First World War, the island was annexed by the British, and in 1925 it was declared a British Crown colony. Since then, Cyprus remained important for safeguarding the British strategic interests in the Middle East region. In the words of British Prime Minister Sir Anthony Eden, the British government's position in Cyprus was defined back in 1956 in one word: oil. And he explained, and I quote, "Our country's industrial life and that of Western Europe depend today and must depend for many years on oil supplies from the Middle East. If ever our oil resources were imperiled, we would be compelled to defend them. The facilities we need in Cyprus are part of that. No Cyprus, no certain facilities to protect our supply of oil. No oil. Unemployment and hunger in Britain." It is as simple as that, unquote. The two British bases secured under the 1960 agreements by which the Republic of Cyprus was established and independence was granted still provide Great Britain with these vital facilities, which have been upgraded over the years, widened and strengthened, continuing to serve its strategic interests and to define Britain's Cyprus's policy. From a geopolitical point of view, while it is most commonplace to use the term bridge or crossroads to describe Cyprus and its position on the map, it would probably be more appropriate to describe Cyprus as sitting on the jugular vein of any empire worthy of mention. It therefore was critical to control Cyprus, or at least prevent others from controlling the island, if this critical lifeline was to be preserved. But unlike some other critical strategic locations, such as the Bosporus or the Straits of Hormuz, or even Gibraltar and Singapore, Cyprus, in spite of its small size, was also often seized and held for its natural resources. Cyprus was famous, as I mentioned earlier, in antiquity for its copper resources. Cypriots first worked copper in the 4th millennium BC, fashioning tools from native deposits of pure copper. Throughout the Bronze Age, Cyprus was already well known for its rich mineral resources and the production and export of copper to neighboring countries of the Mediterranean. The recent discovery of the Uluburun shipwreck, which was carrying over 10 tons of Cypriot copper ingots when it sank off the southwestern coast of Turkey in the late 14th century BC, vividly demonstrates that Cyprus was a major producer of copper for international trade. Also, when the Egyptian or Persian empires sought timber to build a fleet, Cypriot forests were ravaged. Grains were paid as tribute, salt was traded, copper mined and minted. In modern times, Cyprus was left so poor that a standard quip in the early part of the 20th century was that all we had to trade were carobs. Of course, clever traders made a mint in trading carob seeds to the manufacturers of film used in the cinema industry. Long before, of course, digital age. But though Cyprus may have indirectly, of course, had a hand in the development of the cinematic arts, antiquities on the island, representing our 12 millennia long accumulated and multifaceted cultural and artistic heritage, were pilfered by those who appreciated their value, but much was also sold as stone for construction, including for the building of the Suez Canal. In short, two of the constants of the history of Cyprus have been that it was held by foreign powers for strategic and for economic reasons. What then has changed? Independence in 1960 was certainly a historic milestone, but this has been marred since 1974 by the Turkish invasion and occupation of a significant portion of Cypriot territory. Another major change is that we joined the European Union in 2004 and the Eurozone in 2008, and managed to do so notwithstanding the effects of the Turkish occupation, the tremendous destruction on our economy, and the unhealed wounds on our polity and our society. It has always been and remains an uphill and thorny path, poisoned by the persistent, unnatural division of the island and its people. But we are hopeful that better days are to come with reunification, reconciliation, and coexistence. So in terms of our political history, we have managed to move towards independence, though it has obviously not been complete, and we became part of one of the boldest and ambitious political experiments, the European Union, which can best be described as work in process. I intend to comment later on the EU, our presidency, and our attitude in Cyprus towards the Union. But at this point, suffice it to say that we view our accession and membership as a strategic development of the first magnitude. The most recent development, as of last month, in fact, is that we now know with certainty that off the Cypriot shores, at least within part of our southern exclusive economic zone, Cyprus has rich hydrocarbon deposits. We believe this will have a historic impact on Cyprus. Historic in the sense that it is a game changer, because it makes it potentially possible for Cyprus to undergo improvements that will affect all its citizens, work as a catalyst for reunification, and most importantly, move from a situation of occupation to one of coexistence and collaboration. Moreover, we believe that such developments will impact positively both on the European Union, particularly in terms of energy security of the Union, but also in the Middle East, with real prospects for increased economic cooperation, stability and development among all the countries of the rich in hydrocarbon Eastern Mediterranean region. Cyprus is now at a crossroads of its own, with a number of important factors merging together. If this confluence, this convergence of interests is harnessed properly, the opportunities for Cyprus, its partners and its neighbors can have enormously positive results. The positive results of exploratory drilling showing rich hydrocarbon deposits in our exclusive economic zone cannot be emphasized enough. The scale of the findings, which resulted from the drilling of the US company Noble Energy, is conservatively estimated at between 5 to 7 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. These are the results from a single plot and from an initial search. Worthy of mention is the fact that the US Geological Survey has estimated a mean of 1.7 billion barrels of recoverable oil and a mean of 122 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas in the Levant Basin province, as well as 1.8 billion barrels of recoverable oil, 223 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas, and 6 billion barrels of natural gas liquids in the Nile Delta province in the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm talking about the whole area of the Eastern Mediterranean, covering the exclusive economic zone of Egypt, Cyprus, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. In the words of US Geological Society Energy Resources Program Coordinator Brenda Pierce, taken together, the Nile Basin and Levant Basin assessments establish the Eastern Mediterranean region as having world-class potential for undiscovered natural gas resources. From an economic point of view, the significance of these first positive results, and I'm talking about this particular block where we had the exploratory drilling, are great. Based on this, Cyprus has approximately 100 billion worth of natural gas recoverable from this single plot that can satisfy the electricity production needs of the country for 210 years. We are already drawing increased interest by major international energy companies who are considering their bid for the remaining 12 plots for the second round of licensing for exploratory drilling on other parts of the Cypriot exclusive economic zone. This interest is expected to serve as a catalyst for financial investments in Cyprus. With the increase in investments comes job creation, which will not only affect Cyprus, but will also involve directly the economies of our neighbors, but also many other EU citizens. Moreover, the investment that will be required in infrastructure, maintenance, support services, financing, and banking, all these suggest that the job creation will be long-term. This would be a positive and stabilizing development for the region. We expect, and we certainly hope, that the momentum that will be created by the sort of investment in infrastructure and financial structures for the servicing of the energy industry will serve as a catalyst towards greater cooperation among neighbors. The Eastern Mediterranean is a crowded and most tormented place, and there is a structural interrelation, not only in the geological topography of the sea floor, but also in the sensitive balances which exist on the political level. Already we have indications that it will be possible to move towards joint exploitation with neighboring countries of the area, along with the launching of joint projects, particularly in areas where the natural gas or petroleum fields fall across the line separating exclusive economic zones. The Republic of Cyprus is actively promoting this sort of cooperation through framework agreements which we are currently negotiating with Israel, and we are very close to concluding this agreement, and Egypt, and soon with Lebanon, concerning the joint development and exploitation of cross-median line hydrocarbon reservoirs. We strongly hold that not only for our immediate neighbors, but most certainly for our partners in the European Union, the presence of hydrocarbon resources in the Eastern Mediterranean will contribute towards greater energy security in Europe, which is increasingly short of sources of energy. As a member state of the European Union, we have a stake in its success, and therefore our aim is for the deposits of hydrocarbons in our exclusive economic zone to benefit Europe, its economy, and by extension its international standing. Europe is short on energy supplies, and some estimates hold that by 2030 we'll be importing 90% of its energy sources. Even if the 2020 goals of the European Union on renewable sources of energy are fully met, and assuming nuclear power remains an option of last resort, the need for the relatively clean power of natural gas will remain high. We are hoping that the resources in the Eastern Mediterranean, with the cooperation between Cyprus, an EU member, and its neighbors, will be able to contribute towards meeting Europe's needs. Therefore, we look forward to cooperating closely with our European partners and linking them to our partners in our immediate neighborhood and possibly beyond, in advancing towards greater energy security and, by extension, broader economic security and stability. The steps that Cyprus will have to take at this historical juncture, a moment that is both full of opportunities and challenges, will require momentous decisions and bold steps forward. This will potentially mark its course in history and reshape its strategic importance. Cyprus will have to engage all its neighbors and its friends, hopefully including also, at some point in the future, once the island is reunited and occupation is terminated, its northern neighbor, Turkey, which still persists in refusing to have contacts of any kind with the Republic of Cyprus. It is clear to us that Turkey, its attitude and behavior towards Cyprus, its role in the talks between the Greek and Turkish Cypriot communities, and its EU perspective are directly linked to developments in Cyprus. We are greatly disappointed, to say the least, that Ankara is not choosing to grasp this opportunity to play a more constructive and more cooperative role, but is rather continuing along its zero-sum analysis. During the past 6 months, we were dismayed to witness yet again the hostile and aggressive face of Turkey. The start of exploratory drilling in the Cyprus exclusive economic zone, something which has been planned several years in advance and which was not a secret, sparked an angry verbal assault on the part of Turkish leaders at the highest level. I would like to reiterate that what we have said many times since. The decisions and actions of the Republic of Cyprus to explore and exploit its natural resources within its exclusive economic zone fall squarely within its sovereign rights as recognized by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, of which Cyprus is a state party, and are therefore in full conformity with international law. These rights have been publicly acknowledged by all our partners in the European Union, by all members of the UN Security Council, by the Commonwealth, and a host of other international actors. Then came the blatant threats of violence and provocations which involved Turkish warships and aircraft, air and naval exercises in the sea south of Cyprus, and illegal seismic surveying and seabed mapping carried out by ships on behalf of Turkey inside our exclusive economic zone. But Turkey does not stop there. Its newfound confidence, based on real or imagined successes, its economic growth, and I'm sorry to say, the unbridled support it receives in some countries, has given rise to a neighborhood bully. A Turkey whose foreign minister promoted a policy of zero problems with its neighbors is now asserting a policy of only problems. In the case of Cyprus and its exclusive economic zone, Turkey is arguing first that islands have no continental shelf or the right for an exclusive economic zone. And of course, with this logic, neither Great Britain would have an exclusive economic zone. And then that its actions are meant to safeguard the rights of Turkish Cypriots. That is a hoax. The reality is that Turkey cares less about Turkish Cypriot interests and a great deal more about its own strategic interests on the island. Its attitude and strategy towards Cyprus was to utilize real or imagined concerns of the Turkish Cypriots in order to safeguard its own interest in the Eastern Mediterranean. Its current behavior is yet another proof of the reality behind this long-term program. Take, for example, the claims that Turkey is making for an EEZ of its own that in some areas on the map borders on the EEZ of Egypt, as if Cyprus does not even exist. It would be no exaggeration to say that Turkey is not just violating international law. It is behaving in line with the rules of international relations which belong to another era, to another century, long before international law was put in place to guide relations between states. When we decided to seek and work towards accession of Cyprus to the European Union in the late 1990s, our aim was to create conditions on the island which would be seen by the Turkish Cypriots as an expression of our genuine desire to reunify our country in a democratic, peaceful, and prosperous state which respects and safeguards the rights of the individual. On the same basis, our support for Turkey's European aspirations were equally driven by the belief that a Turkey which is harmonized with European rules and norms, which respects human rights, is democratic, and abides by international law in its conduct, a thus fully transformed Turkey can only benefit Cyprus. We are, after all, destined to live in this very close geographical proximity from each other in perpetuity. We are therefore deeply disappointed when we see Turkey failing to progress along its European path. We are disturbed to see Turkey foiling stubbornly its own accession process. The negotiation process is not progressing. In fact, it has remained frozen because Turkey is failing to meet its commitments to the European Union. It is failing because, like in international law, Turkey wants to dictate its own terms to the European Union. The statements by its leadership have left no question that they believe that Europe needs Turkey at any cost. That Europe without Turkey is a miserable Europe, as President Abdullah Gül recently said during his recent visit in Britain. We are hopeful that Turkey, which aspires to be recognized as a regional, if not a global leader, will rise to the occasion. We are hopeful that the Turkish leadership will put aside polemics, diatribes, threats, and adopt a more mild and statesmanlike tone and attitude. We believe that there is room for Turkey to cooperate with its neighbors out of genuine desire towards common ground and mutual benefit. To do that, Turkey must meet its obligations vis-à-vis the European Union. It must meet its obligations in terms of international law. Finally, let me conclude by saying a few words about the long-standing Cyprus problem, which has produced so much suffering to the people of Cyprus as a whole. The Cyprus settlement for the reunification of Cyprus, its people, its economy, its society, that have remained forcibly divided since the Turkish invasion of 1974 and the subsequent occupation of 37% of its territory, has eluded us for over 37 years. I shall not go into any detail on the exact form of such a settlement, except to reiterate the framework that has already been endorsed by the United Nations. A Cyprus settlement must be based on a state of Cyprus with a single sovereignty and international personality and a single citizenship, with its independence and territorial integrity safeguarded, and comprising two politically equal communities as defined in the relevant Security Council resolutions, in a bicommunal and bizonal federation, and that such a settlement must exclude union in whole or in part with any other country or any form of partition or secession. This is the exact quotation from a number of Security Council resolutions that have been adopted over the years. Certainly, this is a very general framework, and there are many pieces that have to be put together and agreed upon in order to reach a workable, comprehensive settlement. Such a settlement should encompass all legal and other instruments and other agreements required to arrive at a functioning federation, which would guarantee a secure, peaceful, and prosperous environment for all the people of Cyprus, of all creeds, ethnic backgrounds, and language groups. What is needed is political will to engage in a productive and substantive negotiation that would identify the required elements on all core issues and put them together as part of a fair and viable federal solution. Although a new effort has started already more than 3 years ago, and more than 130 direct meetings have taken place so far between the two leaders under the auspices of the UN Secretary General, we are still not near making any substantive progress on the most crucial issues of the executive powers in the governance chapter, as well as in the property, territory, and citizenship chapters. The main stumbling block has all along been the position maintained by the Turkish Cypriot side, fully supported by the Turkish government, that the goal should not be a federation in the form of one unbreakable federal state with a single sovereignty, single international personality, and single citizenship, as has been agreed and endorsed by the international community, but a confederal arrangement between two separate states with separate sovereignties. This position is still maintained by the Turkish side, and it is manifested in the nature and content of the proposals submitted on a number of the core issues, with the full encouragement, support, and indeed guidance of the entire leadership of the Turkish Republic at both the political and the military levels. Despite the difficulties and obstacles on the way, we continue to persist in our efforts to reunify our country, to reunify our people, our economy, our institutions, and our society in the form of a bizonal, bicommunal federation. We shall continue to spare no effort towards the direction of Cyprus's reunification, because we strongly hold that such a development would be a win-win situation for all parties concerned, primarily for Cyprus and the Cypriots, Greek and Turkish Cypriots alike, for Greece and Turkey, for the European Union, and for the international community at large. We are determined to make this vision, however difficult and elusive it seems right now, a reality. We owe its fulfillment to our children and to the future generations of Cypriots, but primarily we owe it to our country, which must survive as a single international personality, a peaceful, democratic, and prosperous place for all its citizens, Greek, Turkish, Armenian, Maronite, and Latin Cypriots alike, and as an integral part of the European Union. Especially taking into account the developments from the hydrocarbon discoveries in Cyprus's exclusive economic zone, the prospects for prosperity for all Cypriots once reunification is achieved appear tremendous and should work as a catalyst in the direction of moving the ongoing intercommunal talks forward towards reaching an agreement. We sincerely hope that Turkey, which could significantly benefit from a likely cooperation with a reunited Cyprus in all sectors, but primarily in the energy field, will grasp the message of peace, stability, and prosperity inherent in this new development, and rise to the required level of leadership, responsibility, and wisdom. Even at a much broader scale, the whole area of the Eastern Mediterranean has the potential of developing into a success story, into a win-win situation for the benefit of peace, stability, and prosperity of the countries of the region and their respective peoples. Cyprus will be assuming the presidency of the Council of the European Union on 1st of July 2012. We do hope that Turkey, which has been openly threatening the EU with freezing its relations with the Union during the Cypriot presidency, will realize that this bullying, threatening, and insulting behavior towards the European Union, towards its member states, and towards its institutions on the part of the candidate country is not at all supportive. Rather, it could be detrimental to its EU accession process. If, on the other hand, Turkey chooses to change her attitude, implement her obligations, and cooperate with the Union based on the rules of the game and her responsibilities as a candidate country, the door will remain open throughout our presidency and beyond. I find it pertinent to conclude with a quotation from another British Prime Minister, William Ewart Gladstone, when he said, "We look forward to the time when the power of love will replace the love of power. Then will our world know the blessings of peace." His wise words are as valid in the 21st century as they were valid in the 19th century. Thank you very much.
Questions rather than speeches. If you could also identify yourself and your affiliation. There are colleagues in the red t-shirts who will gain their fitness by running up and down the stairs and attacking you with the microphone. Could we start with the gentleman over here, please, on the right-hand side? Please, yes, on the right-hand side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask two questions, simple, straightforward, which usually is never mentioned, and that is the fate of the British military bases in Cyprus. What is the future for them? Do they ever come up in discussions between the two communities? If they do, what are the attitudes to the problem by each community and their leadership? And number two, about the Armenian community, there's a considerable minority of Armenians in Cyprus who have been there historically, and whether Armenians are part of the formula of the settlement. The minister very nicely talked about the ancient history of Cyprus. Could I just add an addendum that actually, in fact, the whole Cyprus question was invented by the British Empire precisely to scupper the mention of the Armenian question in when Sultan Hamid sort of massacred the Armenians, and Britain, as a Christian nation, protested and sort of pretended to protect the Armenians. The Sultan gave Cyprus to Disraeli precisely to scupper the international stir about the question. So in view of this, I would be grateful if she could enlighten the question, the situation about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's take another question. The gentleman up here, please.
Thank you very much. The name's Ewan Grant. I'm a business intelligence analyst, and my question is in relation to Cyprus's financial sector, particularly as you stressed in relation to the building up of financial and banking services in relation to oil infrastructure and extraction. How compliant is Cyprus with international banking regulations and anti-money laundering, know your customer procedures, particularly in relation to certain Russian organizations which don't necessarily welcome transparency? And following on from that question, it is related in relation to the situation in the late 1990s when Cyprus was considering buying Russian S-300 anti-aircraft missiles, and as a result a Turkish Air Force squadron was deployed to Israel for what was called special training. I'd just like to wonder, how was it that the Republic of Cyprus was able to afford considering buying these missiles?
Would you like to take those?
Okay, let me start with the first questions regarding the British military bases. This is not on the agenda of the two communities, as you probably know. This is not on the agenda. Of course, there are a number of political forces in Cyprus that are debating this, and from time to time it comes in the media. There is a dialogue and there is a debate, even with the British, regarding this, but this is not right now on the agenda. We have the very critical issue of the unification of Cyprus. We have the very critical issue of the presence of the Turkish forces and the division of the island. So this is our primary objective at this particular point. Now, regarding the Armenian community, of course, this is a very precious and valuable part of our population with a very long and painful history in its past. The Armenian community, along with the Maronite and the Latin community, they are a part of the Greek Cypriot community. So in 1960, they had a choice to be included either in the one or the other community, and the Armenian community and the other communities, the religious groups, they chose to be a part of the Greek Cypriot community. So in all these, there is, of course, the interests of the other language groups are taken, and religious groups are taken into account during the negotiations. Now, in the financial sector, let me say that, of course, as a member state of the European Union, our financial banking sector and generally the financial sector is fully transparent. There were some problems 20 years ago, and in fact I was ambassador of Cyprus in Washington when there was some questioning of money laundering and so on. But since, of course, we became part of the European Union, all this is transparent, and there was any problem or raising of any problem on the part of any of the international financial organizations that are following these developments in every single country. So our system is very transparent. Regarding Russian money, of course there are Russian money everywhere in the world, including in Great Britain. So, I mean, if you can tell me that there are any problems here, especially in Britain, but also in the United States, there's a lot of Russian money and Chinese money and other money from So, regarding the S-300, I was not in government at the time. It was a decision at the time to purchase this system, and I cannot comment as far as the financing of this is concerned. Of course, we have a budget, and part of this budget was devoted to the purchasing of this system.
Thank you. Could we take the gentleman just here?
Madam Minister, Kyriakos Tsoupas, Cypriot journalist. Madam Minister, in view of the difficulties for so many years and actually the separation between the two communities, how confident are you for reconciliation and effective cooperation in the event of a solution?
Thank you. The gentleman here is Dr. Wall.
Thank you very much. I'm a Turkish Cypriot, and I must stress my disappointment at the Minister's historical analysis of Cyprus problem. She has not mentioned anything about the EOKA. She has stated that the separation in Cyprus has started in 1974.
Excuse me, I appreciate those points very much, but it's an opportunity to ask a question. So could you simply formulate
yes,
the same points as a question?
It's just that those points have got to be, how can she talk about separation of Cyprus in 1974 when the United Nations soldiers were on the island in 1964, when Turkish Cypriots were actually pushed into 3% of the land of Cyprus in ghettos, and their human rights were denied to them. And on the second point, she's talking about the agreements, and she's pushing all the blame onto Turkey. Yet Mr. Rolandis, who was an ex-foreign minister of Cyprus, has stated in his article on the 9th of February 2009, published in the Bridge magazine, he states that the Greek Cypriots has rejected 15 proposals put onto them on the Cyprus issue. These are 1948 Consultative Assembly, which rejected it.
Okay,
55. I can go through them, but I would like her to point out how she can try and blame another side when the Greek Cypriots are actually refusing. Out of the 17 proposals put to them for solution, they have rejected 15 of them. Turkish Cypriots have rejected only one, and 2 of them has been rejected by both sides.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to answer that? Can I suggest you don't go through the 17 proposals?
No. Of course, my Turkish Cypriot compatriot mentioned one Cypriot politician, Mr. Rolandis, who happened to be my foreign minister in the past, and I have full respect for him and for his standing as a politician. But this is democracy. I mean, everyone has its own views. I can mention several Turkish Cypriot politicians that have a different view from what you have already stated. So I think living in a democracy, we have to hear different views, and I don't share this particular view of Mr. Rolandis. But this was not the point of my speech, and I hear you disappointed, your disappointment at the historical analysis, but this was not the intention of my speech. If you have even read the title of my speech, there is no mention of the Cyprus problem. I mentioned the Cyprus problem because I feel an obligation to do that. I cannot come to such an audience without mentioning the Cyprus problem, which is there. It's a very painful reality that we are going through. Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. We are going through an occupation which has lasted for over 37 years. We are suffering from the consequences of this occupation. And I'm talking about Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. This was not the, I mean, if you, I can talk about the OCA, I can talk about anything else, but that was not the purpose of my speech. My speech was about the geostrategic importance of Cyprus, long-term trends and prospects. So I chose this topic. Maybe another time, maybe over coffee, we can discuss about the OCA and we can discuss about other things. Now, regarding reconciliation and effective cooperation between the two communities, I think that it was the Turkish policy from the very beginning. First of all, not to allow any contacts between the two communities. From 1974 until 2003, only birds and flies could cross. Human beings, they were not able to cross. It was impossible for Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots to meet. It was impossible for them to cooperate in any way. So that was the purpose of the Turkish policy, to keep the two communities apart. I'm talking about 1974 onwards, because this is the occupation.
Okay. Thanks, sorry.
So I am a firm believer that despite the 37 years of separation and difficulties in communicating, in working together, in living together, I am a firm believer in coexistence. And we have seen so many dramatic changes that happen throughout the world. And I'm not talking about Europe only, where the whole political and geographic scenery in Europe has changed. But we have seen these changes all over the world. We have seen them in Africa, we are seeing them right now in the Arab world. So nothing is impossible. Everything is possible, and when there is a will, there is a way.
Okay, thank you. Could we take the gentleman on the right-hand side, and then the lady behind her? The gentleman with his hand.
Thank you, Adele Amazia, student at SOAS. I was just hoping Dr. Erato could share Cyprus's standpoint on the goings-on in neighbouring Syria and the rest of the region, please.
Thank you. And then there's a lady behind. Yes.
I'm a postgraduate student here at the LSE, and my question is, what are the implications of the discovery of natural resources now in Cyprus to the solution of the Cyprus problem, and whether there have been any demands and claims from the Turkish Cypriots put on the negotiation table now on the issue? Thank you very much.
And the gentleman here, please.
My name is Fedli. I'm a Turkish Cypriot myself as well. And you're quite right when you said that all Turkish Cypriots do not share the same views on the Cyprus situation. I myself believe that most Turkish Cypriots of Cypriot origin actually do want peace, and 28th of January and 2nd of March proved that, where thousands of them descended onto the streets. Now, I share your hope that the discovery of natural gas will hopefully produce a settlement. Now, your government has said that they are willing to share that gas with Turkish Cypriots. Do you feel that you're getting across to the Turkish Cypriots on that issue, or do you feel that the Turkish Cypriots, ordinary people, are getting that? Do you feel they are getting that message from you? Basically, that's my question.
Thank you very much.
I'll start with the last question because regarding natural gas and regarding sharing with the Turkish Cypriots, I think President Christofias, from the highest possible level, from the podium of the General Assembly, he sent a very strong message to the Turkish Cypriots. He sent a message that through reunification, the two communities will be able to share this incredible wealth that we have discovered in our exclusive economic zone. And this is a message of peace, this is a message of prosperity, and I do hope that the Turkish Cypriots will receive this message loud and clear. And I think that from what, at least from the contacts I have, there is a lot of interest in the Turkish Cypriot community. Of course, we have to acknowledge that the Turkish Cypriots are and remain under the overwhelming military, economic, and political control of Turkey. So I do hope that the Turkish Cypriots, who are now a minority in the occupied area, to the point that it seems that the estimates we have of the Turkish settlers is around 300,000, even more. Some Turkish Cypriot friends are telling me that there are 500,000 Turks from the mainland. I don't know. This is not, I mean, there has not been a proper census under the aegis of the United Nations, as we have suggested, to ascertain the exact number. So we do hope that the Turkish Cypriots will receive this message. Now, during the negotiations, and I come to the second question, during the negotiations, so far there has been agreement, and this agreement has not been challenged by either side. There has been an agreement that the responsibility for the natural resources will rest in the federal government. So it will be at the federal level. So this is an agreement that was already reached during the negotiations and has not been challenged by either side. So it's there, and of course, with reunification, with participation of both communities in a federal structure, in the government, in the other bodies of the federal state, of course, the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots will share from this wealth, which is the hydrocarbon discoveries. Now, on Syria, of course, as a member of the European Union, we join and we have the same position as all the other members of the European Union. We have, from the very start, we have condemned these killings and the loss of life of our Syrian brothers and sisters, and of course we have demanded, along with the rest of the European Union, the removal of the Assad regime. We have joined also in the sanctions that have been imposed already on Syria. And we hope that through this pressure, through this sanction, we will have a change to democracy, we will have a change to the much needed reform in Syria, as it was done, of course, in the other Arab Spring countries. Now, we have a particular concern regarding Syria because we are so close. I mentioned that we are only 105 kilometers from the shores of Syria. So in Syria, we have to do it right because it's a much more difficult situation, a much more complex situation, taking into account the composition of the population and the different sects and groups within the population, but also the fact that Syria and the Syrian army is very strong, and anything that will go wrong will have very, very negative spillover effects to the whole region. So this is why we are not in favor, as many of our partners in the European Union, we are not in favor of a military option in Syria. We are in favor of the sanctions, we are in favor of the other forms of measures against the regime, but not military option.
Okay, thanks. Time for some more questions. Could you take the gentleman at the front, please?
Robert McDonald from the Economist Intelligence here. Your probable reserves are not really substantial enough to cover the cost of infrastructure to ship it abroad to Europe. What you really need to do is to aggregate these reserves with those from Israel, Egypt, and Lebanon in some way. The most logical thing to do would be to pipeline them up Western Turkey directly into the grid going to Austria. Can you see any way in which these resources could be used as a bargaining counter with the Turks to make some sense out of this new resource that you have?
Okay, thank you. So, yes, the gentleman here, please.
Theo Theodorou, Coordinator Lobby for Cyprus. Cyprus, through history, has been a victim of its geostrategic position. Will the discovery of hydrocarbons translate to a likelihood of the 200,000 Greek Cypriot refugees peacefully returning to their homes?
Thank you. And finally, the gentleman here.
Thank you. My name is Thanasis Gavos. I'm a correspondent here for Sky and Radio Astra. I just wanted to ask you, how do you judge Britain's stance in all of this regarding the Cyprus problem? And is there something that they really could do, and do they do it?
Okay, I'll start with the first one. We are in the process right now because of this initial assessment. It's not the final assessment because more drilling needs to be done in that particular plot in order to ascertain not only the actual quantity but also the quality and ways how to extract it. So we are at the very initial stages, and of course we have established already a committee, which is a committee of experts. We are not experts, we haven't had this experience before, so we have sought the assistance of experts from different parts of the world, ranging from Norway, that have been already exploiting natural gas and oil for years, but also from other countries. It's a committee of wise men, as they call it, but there is a woman also in that committee. And of course they will be advising the government how to go about. Pipeline is one option. Understand that I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert. But there are other options. There is the liquefaction in building the necessary infrastructure on the island. And this is something we are also discussing with Israel, but also with the other countries in the region. So I cannot tell you which of these options we will choose at the end, and definitely this single discovery is not enough. It will need cooperation with the other countries. Already Israel has discovered in one of the drillings something like 18 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the Leviathan, and around 9 trillion cubic feet in Tamar. Of course, we have another 12 blocks which are going up for the second round of licensing, so we expect that we will have more discoveries in the next few years. So this is, I would say, it's a process which is developing. We have not made any final decisions yet. Now, regarding Turkey, this is something we can discuss, of course, provided that Turkey terminates its occupation of the island, and of course, Cyprus is reunited.
And you're delicately avoiding the question about the British.
Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry. Regarding the hydrocarbons and the return of the refugees, okay, this is not interrelated, but as I said, we hope that this discovery, this wealth, this huge prospect for both communities will act as an incentive, will act as a catalyst for the reunification of the island. And of course, through reunification, hopefully we will have also restitution of property, return of refugees, coexistence in a reunited country, homeland of both communities. So this is, in a sense, my answer to your question. Now, regarding Britain, of course, with Britain we have long-standing relations. We are part of the Commonwealth. We share a lot of common values. We are partners in the European Union, but of course we agree that we disagree on a number of issues, and I want to remain at that.
You can guess you're a diplomat.
Including the Cyprus.
Thank you. Could we take perhaps one more question? Gentleman at the back. This will have to be the last question.
Jason Theo, George, Global Coordinator at Nebomac. With a view to the large amounts of foreign investment that will take place in Cyprus in respect of the hydrocarbon discovery and the considerable revenues that will be generated as a result, has Cyprus thought about how it would deal with the considerable revenues and financial transactions that will take place, perhaps in line with the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund model, to ensure probity and transparency in the transactions?
No, in fact, this is a model that we are examining. Definitely, the sovereign wealth funds that are being established in hydrocarbon producing countries is very important, because we need to ensure that this wealth is secured for the future generations. So the model of Norway is one. There is another model of Qatar, but I think that the model of Norway is one of the best models, and it has already had very good results in generating more income from this wealth. But this is something that, of course, we will be examining at the right time. Let me tell you that from now until we have this revenue, it will take approximately 8 years. So we still have plenty of time to examine all this. And of course, there is plenty of time to solve the Cyprus.
Okay. As I mentioned at the beginning, is a reception just up the stairs to which you are all welcome. But I'd also like to emphasise that really it would only be fair to allow the Minister and the person sat next to her to get to the bar first. So if you could please remain in your seats for security reasons, if you could remain in your seats as standard this evening, and I will escort the Minister to the reception, and then you can come join us for drinks. Before finishing, can I give very warm thanks to the Minister for her speech and her willingness to answer so many questions. It's been very enjoyable indeed. Thank you.